I have changed in the last 2 weeks, or maybe even since the day he was shot. I have changed my position on Trump and his use of insults and name calling against his opponents. We recently ran a poll on the DML News app asking how you felt about this. We had over 4,000 people respond to the poll, and 73% said they want Trump to stop. They don't want the names anymore. They don't want the insults. They say it's going to hurt him and it's going to lose the election. I couldn't disagree with you more, even though for years I agreed with you. I was one of those people who wanted Trump to act more Reagan-like, or if you want to put it more simple, more presidential. What does more presidential mean? Does Joe Biden act presidential? Does Barack Obama act presidential? Did Bill Clinton act presidential? What you really want is you want a guy to get up there and be a phony. And for 20 years, if there was a common refrain that I have heard every time I've talked to somebody, it's, I hate phony politicians. Love him or hate him, Trump is anything but phony. He's authentic. You get what you see. You get what you hear. There's no mistake about it. So I want to go down a few reasons why putting out on social media, talking to your friend about how Trump needs to change and stop doing the name calling is a tactic that you need to stop promoting. Definitely, you need to stop pushing it on social media. Because at this point right now, it's so late in the game, Trump needs nothing other than 110% complete support. He's the guy driving the car. We need to let him drive the car in the way that in which he wants to drive. If he wants to go overly fast and drive with one hand, let him. And here's why. It's too late, folks. You ever hear the phrase, can't teach an old dog new tricks? Donald J. Trump is 78 years old. He's got an ego the size of Jupiter. The last thing you're going to do is be able to convince that man to abandon everything he knows, especially over the past 10 years, and change his ways and act a little bit more like Mitt Romney. Do you really want that? Do you really want a fake Trump? If Trump started to get up and instead of calling Kamala Harris crazy and stupid and dumb and questioning whether or not she really is black and why didn't she ever come up with her blackness before this, if he was just talking to her about her politely and saying, I really do not agree with her policies. I think she's going to be a detriment to the United States. Her policies just don't work. She's a nice person, but they don't work. You'd be like, what happened to Trump? Did he have a stroke? Is he sick? Is everything okay? You'd lose your trust in him because he would have made a fundamental transformation into something you've never seen before. I add on to that. We can't have it both ways. We can't have a guy who's going to get shot in the ear in an assassination attempt and jump up on his feet and tell you to fight, fight, fight like a lion, and then ask him if he could just tame it down a little bit and be a lamb. You can't do that. You can't have that both ways. Trump is what you call a type A personality. I know what that's like. I'm a type A personality. I got a great buddy of mine. He just recently gave me a nickname. He calls me Full Throttle. I love it. I think it's hysterical. I think he just nailed my personality completely. That's what Trump is. He's full throttle. If you were to pull off his throttle, he would look like that little puppy that's sitting in a cage. He'd lose his spirit. That sparkle, that shine in his eye would go dark. If Trump was to stop fighting the way he fights, you should abandon him. If he started talking nicely and dropped all the negative that he says about his opponents, you should worry. It means that he's lost his soul. He lost his spirit. He's no longer the man he was. I bring you back to something. I think it's a great example. Everybody has seen the movie Rocky. Everybody. If you haven't, my goodness, you're missing life. If you remember in Rocky 1, Rocky had no business being in the heavyweight championship of the world. Nobody wanted him in there. He wasn't a traditional fighter. He didn't fight right. And on top of that, he was a southpaw. Everybody said he couldn't win. He was a circus act. Sounds exactly the same way they talked about Trump back in 2015, 2016. And he was in there and he's scrapping with Apollo Creed. He was going against the establishment. And what happened towards the end of that fight? Rocky Balboa had blood dripping down. He could barely see out of his eyes. He was stumbling. He was just walking slowly into the middle of the ring. Apollo Creed couldn't believe it. He says, what do I got to do to take this guy down? Just like Trump. We tried to impeach him. We tried to jail him. We tried to bankrupt him. We even tried to kill him. The guy won't go down. And there was Rocky Balboa in the middle of the ring, bloodied, looking at Apollo and telling him, come on, come on, come on. And Apollo kind of looked up like he couldn't believe the guy was still standing. What do I got to do to beat this guy? And Rocky actually said, hit me, hit me, hit me in the jaw. That is completely against what it is any traditional professional boxer would do. The point of boxing is not to get hit, but to hit the other guy. And Rocky's sitting there, hit me, because he's unorthodox, just like Trump. The reason why Rocky Balboa did that is because it revved him up. It made him go beyond full throttle, because that's what he needed to get his adrenaline and his true fight, because that's who he is. And Rocky comes on to what? Become the champion of the world. What Trump is doing when he's standing on stage, calling out names and giving out insults, whether it's to the press or whether it's to Kamala Harris or Barack Obama or Joe Biden or whoever it is he's up against, the Governor Walz, that's him standing in the middle of the ring saying, come on, hit me back, hit me back. But unlike Rocky, which was a fake movie, Donald J. Trump is in a real fight. And he's fighting for you. He's fighting for me. We're the ones who get the championship belt when he actually wins. Could you imagine if Mickey told Rocky, don't do that? Don't put your, don't taunt Apollo? Think about how that movie changes. The other thing that you have to understand about the strategy that Trump is doing, it works every single time. Because what it does is it rattles his opponent. Think about the last time you were called racist or a misogynist. Imagine if somebody called you a child molester. You'd be on your heels. Automatically, you're on the defensive. And that's why Trump does it. Because it's a punch to the face when you weren't expecting one. You know, Mike Tyson says that. Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. Yeah. Think about what it was like during the debates in 2015, 2016. Little Marco, lying Ted, low energy Jeb. All these politicians knew one mode. We're going to get up on stage and we're going to do our little phony routine, and the person who could raise the most money is going to win. Trump punched him in the face, and their plan suddenly was different. And you're like, oh, wow, he's going to make fun of Marco Rubio. Remember when he ran Paul? He made fun of his dress and his hair. Everybody's like, oh, that's so rude. Well, yeah, guess what? Where's Rand Paul now? Did he win the presidency? It works each and every time. He did that on stage and he won the nomination. Then he came up with Crooked Hillary. And then he won the presidency. And we're going to question this man? He came up with Sleepy Joe. And the only reason why he didn't win is because the election was stolen from him. And we got to stop apologizing for thinking that way. It was stolen from him. If you don't believe it was stolen from him, you're either a liar, stupid, or you've been living under a rock. So now, you know what he should be? He should be calling her Queen Kamala. Queen Kamala. That's what we call her here. Because a queen gets appointed. She's there by birth. Nobody gets a say in the matter. Queen Kamala is the nominee because that's what Barack Obama wanted. That's what he told the media he wanted. Nobody got to cast a single vote for this crackling, wacky woman. The polls tell you she's winning. I'll get to that in a second. But I will give you another example of why it is so important that he uses the name calling. And when it pissed me off the most ever, and then I realized how brilliant it was. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida is the best governor this country has ever had in my lifetime, bar none. He has a near perfect record in Florida. He is more conservative than Trump. He doesn't have any skeletons in his closet. He's married to one woman. He hasn't been with porn stars, no hush money. The guy carries himself like a professional at all given times. He won re-election by 20 points, an actual record here in Florida. He dominated more than any other politician in the last midterms election, and he didn't even have Trump's support. On paper, he is a better candidate. On paper, he is a better politician. And he had all the momentum in the world leading up to him running for president. Trump asked him not to do it. He didn't care. And then what did Trump do? Trump did what he did to Marco. He did what he did to Jeb. He did what he did to Hillary. He did what he tried to do to Joe. And he did what he's going to do to Kamala. He buried him. He said he was part of the establishment. It wasn't true. He called him Ron DeSantimonious. Wasn't true. But what happened was he put DeSantis on his heels. He made DeSantis second guess himself. He made DeSantis have to explain himself. And if DeSantis didn't explain himself, which was the case most of the time, if he didn't fight back, he looked like a weak little man. And that's why Ron DeSantis isn't the nominee. Trump's name calling works. Just like Rocky's hit me in the face works. You don't want to strip him of his spirit. So you need to stop saying it. You need to stop begging for it, and you need to start championing for it. There's no other way around it. You want Trump to talk about policy and policy only? Let me give you a little bit of a clue. If you actually watch a Trump rally from start to finish, if it's 60 minutes, it's 50 minutes of policy and storytelling from 2016. It's 10 minutes name calling. But the media only pulls out the 10 minutes and ignores the other 50. And if he were to change the strategy and just go 60 minutes full policy, they wouldn't show any of it because his policies are great and they don't want to showcase anything that's great. So they'd pull an old clip. He can't win no matter what he tries to do. But DML, the polls, look at the polls. She's neck and neck. Stop it. Stop it. The polls are BS. I've explained this 50 times in the Great American Newsletter at greatamericannewsletter.com. I've explained this on the podcast, and I'm going to explain it one more time, and I'll explain it up to the day of the election. The polls are fixed. They're done on sampling. They're done by people who have an agenda. They're not scientific polls. They are polls that are designed to manipulate you. And so you've got to take it both ways. In the same way, I do not believe that she is neck and neck with Trump. I never believed Trump was up 12 points over Biden. But the reason why those polls were made to look like he's 12 points over Biden was for one reason. Barack Obama wanted Joe Biden out of the race. And so he used those polls to scare the bejesus out of every single Democrat across the country, every single donor, every single media outlet that wants to see Trump buried 6 feet under. So it works both ways. Those polls are BS. I've told you the poll. You want to see what the poll is? Go stand at the bottom of a freaking checkout counter where the guy's bagging the groceries and ask every person that goes by, do you feel like you paid too much for those groceries? And you will get 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100, 1,000 out of 1,000. That's how you poll people. Poll your neighbor who's cutting back on everything around his house. The lawn isn't cut as much because he had to fire the landscaper. The car isn't clean because he can't afford the car wash. That's the polling. Don't believe this other noise. And if Trump calls somebody a name, so be it. And if you're up against a naysayer and they say, I can't vote for him, I can't vote for that idiot, he all he does is do name calling. You turn around and say, you just called him an idiot. You're doing the same thing he's doing. Why is it okay for you and not for him? Why does he have to walk on water and you don't? How much more money did you have in your 401k when he was the president of the United States? How many different landscapers did you have to fire? 0 when he was the president of the United States. How much did that food cost you? 50, 60, 70% less when he was president. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But you know what will? Inflation, illegal immigration, and nuclear bombs. We got to wake up, people. This is our horse, and we got to feed him what it is that makes him run. Unconventional, unorthodox, you've been asking for it for the last 40, 50 years, and you finally got it, and now you're asking him to stop it. And like I said at the beginning of this, I was like you. I was wrong. I was one of those 73%, and I changed my tune. Let that man take his gloves off. This ain't a movie. This is life or death. And if you've ever been in a fight in your life, physically or otherwise, I know I have. If you've ever felt outnumbered, if you ever felt as if it was you versus 10 guys, I've been in that kind of fight before. I wound up in the hospital. But let me tell you something. When you're in that kind of fight, there are no rules. You kick, you scratch, you bite, you punch below the belt. Especially if it's the difference between winning and losing and dying and living. And right now, our country is dying. I don't give a damn if that man pours acid on his opponent. Let's get the White House and the Congress back so we can save this country, because they hit below the belt by cheating and lying every single day. It's time to fight fire with fire.